Welcome to the Retirement Evolved podcast with certified financial fiduciary Adam Bruno.
And we are back once again. Adam, how you doing, my man?
I am doing well, Bill. I really missed talking to you. I missed your voice. I think everybody misses your voice after they've been away a while.
Yeah. Well, everybody except my wife. But that's another story for another time. So always good to be with you. And for those of you just catching us for the first time, we appreciate you being here for the Retirement Evolved podcast from Adam Bruno, who is a certified fiduciary and also your private wealth manager.
Thanks, Bill. That always sounds good when you say it. Private wealth manager, owner, like you said, chief cook, bottle washer, all that fun stuff.
All that good stuff. Founder and president of Evolution Retirement Services. We get together every week to talk about retirement, but in a different kind of way, really. What I love is just kind of shooting the breeze with you about some things that could affect our money and the things we have to kind of be careful of. And we're going to get into some of that today. But again, if you've just found us for the first time, we appreciate you. And if you could, go ahead and press like, subscribe, follow, whatever the button says on your podcast player, because they're not all the same, but we do appreciate that very, very much. And before we get started, we always like to bring up something that I think is kind of interesting. And I got two ways to go today. We usually go with food, but I'm thinking maybe not this week, because there is a food story. We maybe talk about that later, Adam. But
okay. Well, you know I love food.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what. Let's go in a different direction then. Mm-hmm. How would you love to live on a cruise ship? Not just take a cruise, not just take a long cruise, but apparently you can now live on a luxury cruise liner. There's a company planning to launch residential cruise ships. It's kind of like buying a condo on the water, actually. It stops at dozens of European ports. It's going to have 57 cabins, and the price ranges anywhere from $1 to $8 million. How's that for your investment money in retirement? That sound good to you?
You know, I have to say, for myself, there's always two common denominators on a boat. There's a boat and water when we talk about cruises, right?
Right.
Boat and water. And I don't like either one of those things that much, especially when I'm rocking on one above the water. But I have to tell you, Is that like a one-time price, and then all your food, all the excursions, all that stuff's included when they stop in? Because I'll tell you what, I know a bunch of my families that would love to do that. You know, if that's the price, that's everything.
I'll be honest with you. Once I saw the price tag, I didn't read a whole lot further because I'm already disqualified. But but we'd have to check into that for you as well. But I think they're going to these ports regardless. It's not like you got to pay for it. But anything you do in port, I think, will have to come out of your own pocket. So it's buying an apartment basically on a giant apartment houseboat.
That's really what it is. It's not even like a timeshare. It's just this is where you live now.
Yeah.
You know what I have to say. Even if it's not for me, that's a great idea. And when you think about value-wise, I mean, what are you going to spend in retirement traveling anyway? I mean, come on now. You could spend that just traveling the rest of your life. If you're spending $20,000 a year in travel, you're going to approach that $1 million mark.
And if you're a believer in the zombie apocalypse, they can't swim, so that's a good place to be. They cannot swim,
right?
So
I don't care what kind of Hollywood joker decides to make a movie where zombie swims, but it doesn't happen. They sink and then they walk. There's no way that they swim.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I think that's a great, and you've got a really good vantage point for firing down on all the zombies for target practice that day.
So, you got that going for you. But, well, if you can't really afford it now, maybe slap it on a credit card, which is kind of where we're headed today to talk about a little bit. I grew up in the credit card generation. Everybody had credit cards, and I thought we would start there today. I ran across this story from Warren Buffett, and he was talking about a lady who came to him and had questions about her credit card debt. This is a pretty funny story, really.
I had a woman come to see me here not long ago, and she'd come on some money, not very much, but it was a lot to her. And she said, "What should I do with it?" And I said, "Well, what do you owe on your credit card?" She says, "Well, I owe X." I don't know what interest rate she was paying. It was something like 18%. I said, "I don't know how to make 18%. If I owed any money at 18%, the first thing I do with any money I had would be to pay it off. It's going to be way better than any investment idea I've got." It doesn't make sense. You can't go through life borrowing money at those rates. The world is in love with credit cards. But I would suggest to anybody that the first thing they do in life is don't be paying even 12% to anybody. Pay that off. If they're really a good credit and they don't want to do it, come and see me personally. I'll lend you the money at that rate.
I love that. I'll make the 18%.
Yeah, sure. I'll do it. Hey, I'll lend you the money.
What are you kind of with Warren? How do you advise folks when it comes to credit cards as they approach retirement?
I am so with Warren, it's not even funny. I have not had the pleasure of meeting him. I've read, I've listened to podcasts, I've listened. And I have to tell you, Bill, this goes back to what we talk about all the time. We're in such an instant gratification society that anybody who's younger, who has good credit, if they want that car, I'm going to buy it. If they want, they don't even look at the interest rates, right? If they want something, they're going to throw it on the credit card. And like Warren said, the credit cards are, 18%. They're probably higher than that after this next interest rate hike that we're going to have. It's going to be much higher. And this is how people suffer. He is absolutely right. In what world could any of us, any private wealth manager tell you, oh yeah, we know how we can make you 18%, but then it's just going to go back and pay your credit card interest rate. It's just ridiculous. And it's the mentality that everybody has these days. I have to have it. I have to have it now. And there's a credit card company out there that's going to give it to me. I don't care if it's 18%. And nobody has explained this to the younger generation. Now, for the older generation, like you, like me, like the boomer generation, the retirees, I think credit cards are an amazing tool because when you put everything on the credit card, you have every intention of that month paying it off. And all you're really doing is you're using the credit card companies for the points then, because you're not paying any fees or anything like that. You might pay an annual membership fee, but for what you get from it, it's pretty darn good. Think about American Express. I think they charge you $500 for the year, but anytime you travel, you can go to their lounges. You can, they even have a massage therapist in there now. They have manicure specialists in there, and everything is, so my thought is if you're older and you're going to pay it off every month, absolutely use them because you're going to get, and you get your points. Then that helps with your airfare, your travel, whatever it is. You can identify an area of your life with credit cards that has some sort of rewards for you, whether it's 3% cash back, whether it's travel allowances, points, those types of things. If you have the money, right? But the people that are guilty of this don't have the money, have no business buying the fancy car or the, whatever it is, the 80-inch TV that talks to you in the morning. They've got refrigerators that talk to you now, for Pete's sakes. But, people don't have any business buying these things on their budgets, but because they have the ability to do it, they're going to do it every time, and they're not even going to realize that they're getting raked across the coals.
No, you're right. And that's what happens, right? I remember when I first got started in life back in the, we'll go early 80s. Sure. We'll go there. And
that's when I was born.
Yeah. And, I was heading out of college in the early 80s, and I was going to get my life started and all that. Everybody got a credit card, right? I remember the first one I ever had, I think, was a Sears card.
Oh, you were good then. That's good. Those were hard to get back in the day.
And then it came in the American Express and all that other stuff, and it was just very easy to use them. And the next thing you know, you're just up to your eyeballs in the same payments every month because you can't ever pay it down.
Right. And even everybody pays the minimums, right? The minimum payments sometimes on these higher interest cards, they don't even cover the interest rate.
Right.
Credit cards have gotten a lot better these days. Back in the day, you didn't get a package in the mail after you got your credit card explaining all of the debt. But nobody reads that. They throw it away. But credit cards, to their credit, no pun intended, have done a better job of explaining exactly how much you're going to pay.
Right.
And nobody looks at it because they don't want to think about it. They just know I need the new toy and I need it now. I'll pay whatever I need to pay. And that's it.
Yeah, but then they don't realize that you're paying for it. That new toy that you sold 2 cars ago, you're still paying for it 30 years later. So.
Oh, absolutely. This goes back to the other. This reminds me of another story that I love. David Bach, very, very famous writer. I've met him a few times. We've talked. He's also a private wealth manager. His family was, his dad was, then his sisters, then him. And he branched off. He had a real passion for writing, so he wrote some of this stuff down. He has a book called The Latte Factor. And is it The Latte Factor or The Latte Effect? He was at a company, and he was talking to them about investments, the employees and stuff, because employees were asking, well, how do I earn enough money for retirement? All those common questions. And most people in the room were apparently, taking it, very well. They were writing things down. There was one woman in the room who was completely disengaged and who said, oh, you know what? I can't do this. I'm a single mom. I've got kids. I can't put away 5% or whatever it was. And he had an idea because he had older kids as well. So he had explained this to his kids. David had an idea and said, listen, and he saw that she had a Starbucks cup. He said, how often you go to Starbucks? And she said, oh, twice a day. She said, I've got to have my coffee. I need my caffeine, blah, 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 blah. And David said to her, well, you know what? If you just took what you spent on coffee every day and put it away on a weekly basis, you would have over $1 million when you retire. And she said, what? No way. She said, if you could prove that, I'll do it right now. And he did. He had an appointment with her, and he showed her the numbers just over time, because she was in her 30s or something like that. Over time, with 30 to 40 years of, compounding interest, just the money she spent on her coffee was over $1 million in retirement that she had. Nobody thinks about these things, though, right, Bill? They have to have their fuel. They have to get in the Starbucks line. I would look at it the other way. I think of it every time I pass a Starbucks, I thank the Lord that I don't drink coffee, because I'm thinking to myself, how many minutes of my life would I waste in that line? I mean, have you ever seen how long those lines are? And people wait.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those weird things that we have going on in our world right now.
Yeah.
But you're right. People don't think about that. If I just quit doing this and put that money into an account, right? It's like when people get into trouble with their money and their budget, they never think about stop ordering from Uber or going out to eat.
Right.
Rather than just go ahead and buy some groceries, which is, still cheaper despite everything else we're going through.
Yeah, barely, right? I mean, that's the thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
It is. I get that. I get what people think with those things, but you're absolutely right. When you add it all up, when you just write down everything that you're spending, and nobody ever wants to do it. I'm pretty fortunate. My families that I serve, I don't like the word budget. We have a lifestyle cost per month, and I tell them to throw it all in there. The bills, how often they go out to eat, everything. I want to know exactly, what it's going to cost them for the rest of their life at this monthly rate. And you'd be surprised. Most families are at that $5,000 to $7,000 range, and they're millionaires. But they're millionaires for a reason, right? They've lived a disciplined lifestyle.
Yeah, you're right, and that's really hard for a lot of people to realize that what I'm doing today is going to affect me in 30 years. And that's where guys like you come in to help a little bit, and that's why I hope people who listen to the podcast talk with you or somebody who's a financial advisor, because I don't know that we understand exactly how important that is as we roll towards retirement. Especially when we're going through things like we're going through now, right? The rising cost of everything and inflation. But by golly, Adam, that's going to get better, because the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 has been signed. It's a law now. Student debt is being forgiven. Only time's going to tell if it actually does reduce inflation, though. But boy, the president, he sure is talking up the benefits.
It's going to offer working families thousands of dollars in savings by providing them rebates to buy new and efficient appliances, weatherize their homes, get tax credit for purchasing heat pumps and rooftop solar, electric stoves, ovens, dryers. It gives consumers a tax credit to buy electric vehicles or fuel cell vehicles, new or used. And it gives them a tax credit of up to $7,500 if those vehicles were made in America.
So that's what the president has to say about the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. How important are those tax credits, and do you think they're going to be real?
You know why I don't think any of it's real? I'm gonna be very respectful to Mr. President here when I have this. But my question to Mr. President is, his own officials, his own office has said that this bill is about reducing the amount of debt that we're in as a country and kind of bridging that gap between the debt and what the government brings in, right? So in what way does paying out all of these tax credits help rein in that debt deficit that we're in now? I've got an interesting, anybody that wants it, I can shoot an email to them. The difference between what the government spends and what it actually brings in is about a 6-inch difference on paper when you're looking at those two lines. It's a huge gap. It's trillions of dollars. Now, here's the idea with this plan, right? So in order to implement the Inflation Protection Act and try to limit our spending and bring us closer to an even keel here, they're going to spend $369 billion in new spending, right? Now, they've said that's to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, invest in clean energy technologies, and extend subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. I don't have a problem with any of those things. But it's when you try and paint the pig with the lipstick that I have a problem, because the bill plans to bring in more than $300 billion in new revenue. But we're spending $369 billion in order to bring in $300 billion in new revenue, right? Now, let's not forget the fact that we're $31 trillion in debt right now. Okay. What is happening here? Who is running this country? I'm telling you what, there's a famous line from a movie that says, I've seen two monkeys crap twice at the zoo that were more organized than this. Only they didn't use the word crap, right?
Right.
It's just ridiculous to me. This thought of, and they've self-admitted, everybody who's designed this bill, they say it won't help curb inflation dramatically, first of all. It's not going to help curb inflation dramatically at all. Then they go on to say, nor right away, right? So it's not likely to have major effects on inflation in the next few months. What are we really doing here? What is this? It's like I told you before. I know that we have climate issues. I know that we have huge environmental issues. This is the type of stuff that I'm talking about when I say I don't have any confidence or faith in leadership to do anything about this, because when we tear this thing down, it's really not doing anything. Not to mention the fact, I think we brought it up last podcast, California is saying in 2035, everybody has to, if you're buying a new car, it has to be an electric vehicle, right?
Yeah.
Now, how are you supposed to do that with the shortage of lithium that we have right now? Lithium's at a premium. Not to mention it's not the most economical way or environmental way to dispose of batteries, things like that. We still don't have an answer for that. So we have all these problems, and here, Mr. President, you are saying that you're addressing these problems, and I do think that you're just a little bit too unintelligent to think about this and actually believe it. He probably believes this. The intelligence is just not there anymore. I mean, you could hear it in his voice when he talks. It's kind of like somebody's got a hand up his back and he's a puppet. You know, he probably truly believes this is helping the environment, but it's not. What is it really doing here? And that's why I get so frustrated. You're using this as a platform to hopefully get to be president again for another 4 years when the voters start to turn out, and you haven't really done anything. If I was the Republican Party right now, I would just sit back. Heck, forget the Republicans. If I was any party right now, I would just sit back and watch how this mess plays out, because it's going to be a poop show. Just like at the zoo, it's going to be awful.
And what I find interesting is that you're absolutely right. I mean, obviously a bunch of spin doctors got together somewhere, so they made sure they called it the right thing. Because if we say that it's an Inflation Reduction Act, then people will believe that. And also, you know, for folks to sit back and really believe that any of this stuff is going to happen, I think is a little bit naive, because as we've talked about before, how are you going to show me how you were going to do all this? First of all, by converting everything and rebuilding everything to become more green, which I agree, you know, is not a bad idea. Well, that's going to cause issues, and that's going to cost money. And then also part of the bill says that of the $737 billion in revenue they're going to raise, $222 billion of it is going to be from a 15% corporate minimum tax. Well, who do you think's paying for that? Me.
Well, the corporation.
You.
Well, right. And that's the thing, Bill. That was the other thing that I had to say to Mr. President. That you can't be a 30 to 40-year-old worker, you know, working overtime, raising your family, doing it, and pay attention to all this. But the fact of the matter is, when these larger corporations are imposed with these taxes, this is trickle-down economics. This is normal, right? This is Reagan talked about this. This is what happens. They are completely ignoring the fact that this is going to trickle down and cause unemployment rates to soar. When they have to start paying more taxes, the first thing they're going to do is cut jobs. It's going to happen. History has shown us this time and time again. Yet they choose to just turn a cheek to it and ignore it while they sit in their expensive houses with their lifetime medical costs paid for. Like, this is ridiculous. It's going to happen. And what's that going to do to inflation when the unemployment rate is on the rise? Bill, it's crazy to me. It's right there in black and white in front of us. It literally says these things.
Yes.
You talk about, what was the numbers on the tax for the corporations again?
15%, hoping to raise $222 billion.
Oh, my God.
Which is, and when I said it's going to be us, it's going to be us in the form, and I say us, middle-class America, to the form of unemployment and the form of what these corporations that create products. Well, who's going to pay for that? You
right.
and me with the price of the product.
That's right. Bill, think about it like this. If we own those businesses, what if the government said to us, this is what we're implementing, but if you want to bring these companies back and do most of your business in America, we'll waive it. Now we've just killed two birds with one stone, right? Now we have more people with more jobs paying more taxes, And that's the key. But, somebody in our office, they just love China. That's the reality, right? Everything that the previous president has done to get us away from China has now been undone. And now we're right back in the pocket again, right? I mean, these corporations, they're not guiltless in this, okay? But what I'm saying to you is, how about a president that takes a strong position and says, listen, you're going to pay these taxes? If you decide to do most of your business in the country where you're selling most of your products, which is America, if you decide to bring American jobs back, I'd be the first president to say, you know what, waive it. We don't need them paying. If they're back here, they're already paying higher costs to be in America. But what is it doing for the economy? What are we finally known for now? We haven't been known for anything in years. It's been awful. Yeah. So to bring them back and tell them, hey, listen, we'll waive the taxes. Just make sure you have all the jobs for the Americans. You pay everybody good. Everybody benefits from that. More taxes, more revenue from taxes. Americans don't like it, but we have to pay taxes.
More jobs.
I said this before. We are in the lowest tax environment we've been in close to 40 years, and we're all spoiled by it. And before you know it, it's going to be a huge jump because we've been holding ourselves down, paying as little as we can. The only way for them to close that deficit between the debt that is owed and what they bring in is to raise taxes. And it's not going to work if they do it just to the corporations and they don't do it to everybody. The corporations are going to fire people. Then people are going to be unemployed, and then they're paying no taxes. It's horrible.
It is. It's an amazing zoo show. We'll go with that. It's an amazing zoo show. And really, what is any of this going to do for us? I have no idea. Only time will tell. But you're right. And a lot of this always gets done, I believe, for no other reason than to be able to say, hey, look what we did, so reelect us.
Exactly.
And listen,
that's all this is.
And listen, that's both sides of the aisle. I'm not blaming the Democrats here because every politician does it. From the minute they're elected, they do nothing but spend their next 2 years hoping to get reelected.
That's right.
And in the meantime, nothing actual gets done for those of us that are out here facing it day to day to day. And it's frustrating.
Well, you know what's frustrating too, Bill, is, you see a previous president, and this is such a hot topic right now. I'm not going to get too much into it, but listen, I don't like the guy. I don't respect him as a person, but as the president, there were some things done that you could tell this guy isn't just trying to win the next election. This guy is going all out right away. And some people hated it, but the reality of the situation is we had a president who wasn't taking a salary, who didn't care about the money, who just wanted to try and fix our country. And yeah, of course, there were ways that he went about it that all of us said, oh, gosh, like, let's just get him away from Twitter. Why does he even have a Twitter account? There were things that were happening. But behind the scenes, what was really being overshadowed was the positive things that were happening. To finally get away from China, to finally, tell them, listen, this is it. You're not going to, they've significantly undervalued their currency for years, right? To finally do something about these things instead of just being another wheel in the cog that takes advantage of the system and says, oh yeah, I'm president now, or I'm this now, or I got this office. Like, let's do something. And that's what frustrates me the most about it, because you don't have to like somebody. My wife said it best. I love her to death. Adam Bruno, this was one of your greatest lines. She said to me, we were going to vote, and she said to me, I just can't understand people. They hate them so much. And my wife is Jamaican, and she's more independent than anything else. But she is, we were going outside of Publix one day, and I was walking behind her. I had parked the truck, and I had, Dodge Ram hat on or something. She's running in there and trying to get in because Florida's hot and, Publix is air conditioned. And there's this guy, complete leftist, right? You can identify these people. You could say complete rightist, whatever you want to say. But this guy stops and says, remember to get rid of that pig in office in November, sister. And so this guy just racially profiled my wife because she's black. So naturally she has to be a Democrat, right? Or something like, that's the country that we live in now. And my wife, after that, I got really mad because I didn't understand at first what was going on because I had walked up behind her. And then she just kind of smiled like my wife always does. She just smiles and says, yeah, and she's a very nice person. And we were in the store. I'm like, was he? And she said, yeah, I think he thought that I was a Democrat because he was yelling this and yelling that. So I immediately turned to go back outside the store because you don't mess with my family. That's the one thing that you don't do.
Right.
I will rain fire. But she stopped me and she said, honey, this is why things are the way they are. If you go back out there and you confront him, she said, listen, it's not a Valentine. It's a ballot, right? You don't have to be in love with the people that you're voting for. You have to vote for the people that you believe are going to do the best job. And there's nobody out there listening to that podcast today that can say everybody is out there doing their best right now. Wow. It's not happening. And we're suffering, and we'll continue to suffer while we draw our lines in the sand and attack each other on social media.
Yeah, but the problem with that is that we're also living in a world where voting for the person who you think is going to get the most done the way you like it, everything's become personal, as in everybody has a cause. What are you going to do about my cause? What are you going to do to help me? And it's become that rather than what's best for all of us.
Oh, right? That's true, Bill.
And so
that's true.
When you look at things and you hear the politicians give their spiels, and, unfortunately, you're right. A lot of people don't just look at what's good for the country is good for all of us. They're just more interested in what's good for me, and that's the way that a lot of people vote, unfortunately.
Well, also, Bill, with that, I think that we've reached a point now where all these politicians want to do is try and make everybody happy. I'm sorry. Yeah. That's impossible. Yeah. We're in too much trouble to make everybody happy. I said that the other day with Maverick was climbing on the back of the couch, and he's almost 2 now. He's climbing on the back of the couch, and we're telling him no, and he's not listening. So I gave him a whack on the butt, and I don't like that as a parent. I hate that I have to discipline my kids certain ways sometimes. But you know what? Sometimes you need a spanking. And that's what we're dealing with now as a country. This country needs a spanking. Stop it. Stop spending all this money. We need a spanking. We're not paying enough taxes. I'm sorry. I know everybody doesn't like to hear it, but we're not. Nobody's paying enough taxes. And this is the result of it. It's just, that being said, one group shouldn't be taken advantage of more than the other when it comes to taxes. And frankly, I shouldn't be paying for everybody else's crayons when they can't afford them. Right, Bill? We talked about this.
Yes. Thank you for remembering that. Yes.
That's absolutely, it was so profound the way that you said it. It's exactly the way that this system is set up now. They want to talk about subsidies for medical costs and stuff. But next year, they're going to raise Medicare Part B costs 20% again. They already raised them 20% from last year to this year. Nobody's doing anything about that. So the seniors are going to have to pay way more to support. It's just it's a nightmare. It's not equally distributed, and it's never going to be in this country.
And also the Medicare stuff that is going to be covered is not nearly as extensive as they'd like us to believe.
So, absolutely not.
That's the other thing, too. And, when I hear him talking about all of these green things that we're going to buy, right? Energy efficient this and energy efficient that. I just can't help but wonder how many of the folks who helped write this bill and signed it are involved in the production of some of that stuff. If I was a conspiracy guy, which I'm not, so I won't bring that up.
Well, you always have to follow the money. We've talked about that a million times. You follow the money. That's why with this new Inflation Protection Act, I think there's actually only 3 drugs. The Inflation Reduction Act, I think I've been calling it the Protection Act, but the Inflation Reduction Act, we talk about, this whole idea that medications are going to be easier to come by and they're going to be free and this and that. Well, there's only really 3 of them that are free on there. And it's the same drug company that's making all the money from that. So to your point, obviously you start to wonder how many of the Chevrolets, how many of the Dodges, how many of these companies are in the pocket of the government now or pushing their way for electric vehicles. Remember when electric vehicle was such a dirty word and everybody would be like, and people would end up dying, right? I think that somebody made like a water car once that ran on water or something and ended up dying 2 years later or something. It's crazy. Now it's all out in the open and electric is making this huge push. I'm not saying that I'm disappointed with that. I think that it's great for the environment. And let's face it, we live on Earth. We definitely have probably taken a little bit more advantage of the environment than the environment takes advantage of us. But again, when we talk about lithium batteries, that's not efficient for the environment all the time. So there's a lot of holes that we could poke in this whole thing here. It's like you said, if you were a conspiracy theorist, well, I would argue that the whole thing going on now is one big conspiracy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just it's always interesting that the folks sit up there in D.C. and do their thing, and really those of us that are affected by it, you almost feel like we have absolutely no say anymore whatsoever, and that's a shame. That's just a shame.
Do you feel that way, Bill? I have to agree with you on that. I feel
sometimes
very disconnected.
Yeah.
Even though I go out and vote every time, right? How many of us actually vote in every election? Right. I mean, that's a hard thing too. People have died. Well, they've bled out on battlefields so that you could vote, and people don't vote all the time.
Yeah, and what bothers me the most is that when everything started, these guys went to Washington and they were working for us, right? They worked for the people, they were of the people, and now they have made themselves elite. They are not They're passing laws for the people, yet the laws aren't good enough for them as far as they have their own Social Security. They have their own health plan, right? I mean, if what's good for us is good, then it should be good for everybody. And, to me, that's where starting to fix the problem up in D.C. is or over in D.C. or wherever you're listening to us from, in D.C. begins, is making them live the same way that we live.
Holding them accountable.
And when your time is up, which I believe in term limits too, but, I don't know how you get that done. But when your time is up, and you get a severance just like you do when you leave any company.
That's right.
Right? You don't get continued benefits. You don't get all this. You're not the head of a company. You're not a president or a CEO. So just go back to acting like you are of the people, but that will never, ever happen. And as long as that is the situation, I believe that those of us that are of the people are just going to, we're going to have to take it until we figure something out better. I don't know.
Well, and especially the retirees, right, Bill? Because people are listening to this and they're having a great time listening to it, but they're also saying, well, this is a retirement show. Well, the idea is everything that we're talking about right here is dramatically going to affect your retirement accounts. It is. They have to get the money from somewhere. And the more we keep spending, the more likely that we're going to reach this point in 2026 where we see a significant increase in taxes. And what does that look like for your IRAs, for your 401ks, for the money that you've grown tax deferred because you've been trained to do it that way for your entire working career, right? So now you're 72 and now money starts coming out and it's 2030. And what does that tax look like when it comes out now? Are we paying more or are we paying less? I would say that we're more than likely we're going to be paying more. And everything we discussed today is the direct result of that. That's exactly why we're paying more, because of the things that are happening today and this lack of leadership.
Absolutely. And you know what? If you've got questions about how your retirement can be affected, why things are being done the way they are, you just want a better understanding, that's what Adam and his team are here for. The good folks at Evolution Retirement Services. If you want to give them a call, if you have any questions about something you've heard on the podcast today, their number is 866-838-3765. 866-838-3765. You can find out more at evolutionretirementservices.com. And again, Adam and his team are there to help you answer any questions or to better understand it, or if you've heard something today you want to talk about. Adam is there for you.
Absolutely.
Adam is
and
there
you know
for
what? I'll do you one better, Bill. Anybody that has any questions, and we've been getting a lot of them lately, you can email us through the website as well if you'd like to. If you don't want to talk to somebody but you still want some answers and you want to collect your thoughts and shoot us an email, I promise we get back to everybody. Usually we try within 2 business days to get back to you if you send us an email, especially if it's a longer one. We try to address everything that we can in that. Anytime you call or contact us at all, there is absolutely no obligation to buy anything with us or work with us or anything like that. What we've done is I've gone from being a very, very successful salesman at the beginning of my career to really realizing what's important, and that's truly helping people. So everybody on the team here is on the same wavelength. We all train the same way. We all have high designations, certified financial fiduciaries, certified financial planners. We have 2 estate planning attorneys, two CPAs. So everybody here the team was designed to help first and foremost. And yes, we'll identify people that we could probably work with, but it has to be a good fit. And that's the second thing that we're looking at. The first thing we're looking at is what's the primary problem? What's the concern that this person has or this couple has? And we try as best as we can to answer those questions as quickly as we can. So it has been a little bit jammed up lately with the podcast. I did not expect everything that's happened to happen with people liking it so much, Bill. Not that I ever doubted you, but I'm not a radio guy, so I mean, I've got a face that wasn't built for TV or radio, so it's kind of like,
wow.
But we have been getting a lot of phone calls, a lot of communication. We're doing our best to answer everybody, and we want to make sure. I try personally to be able to answer, but obviously anybody on the team here is going to be able to help.
There you go. So again, give them a call. The number again is 866-838-3765, or from the website, send an email at evolutionretirementservices.com. Adam, always a pleasure when we get together and talk about stuff because, man, you are passionate about what you do and what you believe in. And I would normally end today by saying I'm going to go try whatever food we talked about, but I'm going to be honest, man. I didn't go try the Oscar Mayer hot dog popsicle and don't know that I can bring myself to do it.
Don't do that to yourself, Bill.
With all due respect to the folks at Oscar Mayer, it just doesn't sound like something I'd want frozen.
Well, again, those two, like I said last time we talked about this, those two things don't go together, popsicle and hot dog flavor. It just doesn't seem like it goes together. And don't forget, Bill, don't everybody listening as well, taxfreefortmyers.com, FORTMYERS. And you can also download the book for free. I've got one of those on there as well. Lots of helpful information. Lots of things that we talked about today broken a little bit down into more detail for you. So happy to provide that. And Bill, it's always a pleasure. Can't wait to talk to you next week.
Looking forward to it myself, Adam. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for listening. If you could hit your like, subscribe, follow button, whichever one you have on your podcast player, we would very much appreciate it. This is the Retirement Evolved podcast with Adam Bruno.
Investment advisory services are offered through Evolution Wealth Management Incorporated, an investment advisor registered with the state of Florida. Registration does not imply any level of skill or training. Evolution Wealth Management's unique CRD number is 307644. You can obtain a copy of Evolution Wealth Management's firm brochure, Form ADV Part 2A, free of charge by visiting advisorinfo.sec.gov. Evolution Wealth Management offers investment advisory services only, where it is appropriately registered or exempt from registration, and only after clients have entered into an investment advisory agreement confirming the terms of engagement and have been provided a copy of the firm's ADV Part 2A. Insurance services are provided by Evolution Retirement Services. Any guarantees mentioned are backed by the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company and may be subject to restrictions, limitations, or early withdrawal fees, which vary by the issuer. They do not refer in any way to securities or investment advisory products. You should consider the charges, risks, expense, and investment objectives carefully before entering a contract. This material has been prepared for informational purposes only and should not be construed as a solicitation to affect or attempt to affect either transactions in securities or the rendering of personalized investment advice. This material is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for tax, legal, accounting, or other financial advice. Evolution Wealth Management and Evolution Retirement Services do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. You should consult your own tax, legal, and accounting advisors before engaging in any transaction. Evolution Wealth Management and Evolution Retirement Services are affiliated entities.